My golden child brother begged for $15 million after I sold my company for $25 million. Then my mom forged my signature and tried to drain my account. What I remember most about that moment, the moment my 35-year-old brother dropped to his knees on my parents' dining room floor and started sobbing into the carpet, is that the room went so quiet I could hear the turkey still crackling in the oven 2 rooms away. "I've done everything right," Lucas wailed, pressing both fists against his eyes like a toddler. "I'm supposed to be the successful one. You owe me at least $15 million. My mother slammed both hands on the table so hard the gravy boat jumped. "You stole his future," she screamed at me. At me, while my 35-year-old brother cried on the floor of a house he did not pay rent for. I sat there with a fork halfway to my mouth, a piece of turkey going cold, and I thought, 32 years. It took 32 years, and this is the response. My name is Ethan Reyes. I am 32 years old, and until that Christmas dinner, exactly one person at that table knew that 10 years of 70-hour weeks, ramen dinners, and a company built out of a spare bedroom had just turned into $25 million in my bank account. That person was me. By the end of that dinner, everyone knew. By the end of that week, my own mother would forge my signature twice to try to take it from me. And by the time it was over, a tow truck would be pulling a brand new Porsche out of my parents' driveway while the neighbors watched from behind their blinds. But that is the end. Let me start at the beginning, because the beginning is the part that actually explains everything. Growing up, there were two kinds of kids in my family: Lucas and everyone else. Lucas was 3 years older than me. He was the quarterback, the homecoming king, the one whose report cards got taped to the fridge even when they were mediocre, because, as my mother Evelyn used to say, he tries so hard, considering everything he has on his plate. I genuinely do not know, to this day, what was on Lucas's plate. He had the same plate I did. He just got more attention for whatever was on it. I was the quiet one, the tinkerer, as my Aunt Clara used to call me. Not unkindly, exactly, but in the way you would describe a hobby rather than a person. Like I collected stamps instead of building things that ran on logic and electricity and, eventually, made money. When I was 9, I broke my arm falling off the monkey bars at school. My mother picked me up, and on the drive to the emergency room, with my arm bent at an angle, arms are not supposed to bend. She spent the entire 15 minutes explaining, calmly, how expensive emergency room visits were and how I needed to be more careful because money does not grow on trees, Ethan. I was 9. I remember staring at my arm and thinking, even then, I wonder if Lucas would get this lecture. He would not have. I knew that. Even at 9. When Lucas was 26, he got involved in what I can only describe as a textbook pyramid scheme. Something involving wellness products and a tiered commission structure that, even to someone who barely understood finance, sounded like a scam from the first PowerPoint slide. He racked up $40,000 in debt chasing it. My parents took out a second mortgage on the house to bail him out. There was a small family meeting about it. I remember sitting at that same dining table, 20 years old, listening to my father say gravely, "We have to protect Lucas. He's still finding his footing." Lucas was 26. I am not sure what footing looks like at 26 that it does not at 20. But apparently, I had already found mine, because nobody ever asked if I needed help finding anything. For my 30th birthday, 2 years before that Christmas, I got a card. Store-bought, the kind with a generic "Happy Birthday, Son" on the front and a cartoon of a cake. Inside was a $20 bill, and, in my mother's handwriting, "Don't spend it all in one place. Love, Mom and Dad." I was 30. I had been running my own company for 4 years by then. I did not say anything. I just put the card in a drawer, and I think that drawer, in retrospect, is where a lot of things started quietly going into storage. Not just cards, but the part of me that kept expecting any of this to change. I had started my company as a workflow automation platform for small logistics firms, the kind of unglamorous business-to-business software that nobody puts in a movie, but that, it turns out, plenty of companies will pay real money for. When I was 22, I was working night shifts at a diner to cover rent while I coded during the day. I pitched it to investors 51 times before the 52nd meeting, with a firm called Beacon Ridge Ventures, finally went differently. I remember the exact number because I had started keeping a spreadsheet. Yes, another spreadsheet. Apparently it runs in families, just not in the way you would think. I tracked every rejection, partly to torture myself, and partly because, somewhere around rejection 30, I had decided that if I was going to fail, I was at least going to fail with data. It took 10 years. 10 years of growing the company from me and a laptop to a team of 40, then 90, then 160 people. 10 years of missed holidays, including, I will admit, several Christmases I skipped entirely, citing work, which was true, but which was also, if I am honest, partly relief. Last year, a tech conglomerate acquired the company. The deal closed for $25 million. I never told my family, not because I was hiding it out of shame, and not, despite what my mother would later scream at me, out of cruelty. I told myself at the time that I just had not found the right moment. But underneath that, if I am being honest with myself, there was a quieter, uglier little experiment running. I wanted to see if they would ever notice me without a price tag attached. I did not get an answer to that question for almost a year. Then, I got it all at once, at a dinner table, over turkey that went cold while my brother cried on the floor. It was Aunt Clara who said it, my mother's sister, the one relative who had always asked, vaguely but genuinely, what I was up to these days. Even if she usually followed it up by asking Lucas about his big promotion before I had finished answering. So, Ethan, she said, leaning over with a smile as she reached for the cranberry sauce. How's the software business? I heard you closed a massive deal. The table went quiet. Not dramatically. Not yet. Just the ordinary quiet of 14 people momentarily having nothing to say. What deal? Lucas scoffed, not even looking up from his plate. Ethan just tinkers with computers. I do not know what made me answer honestly. Maybe it was the word tinkers. Maybe it was 32 years of cards with $20 bills in them. Maybe it was just that I was tired. Genuinely, physically tired. The kind of tired that makes you stop performing the role you have played your whole life. Just for a second, just to see what happens. I sold my company last year, I said. 10 years of work. The acquisition closed for $25 million. The air left the room. I mean that almost literally. I remember the specific sound of my father's fork stopping midair, and the silence where the usual background hum of a family dinner should have been. Lucas's fork clattered onto his plate. His face went from confused to pale, to something I had never seen on him before. Something that looked, for just a second, like fear. That's not fair, he whispered. Then louder, almost frantic, he said, You can't have that kind of money. He shoved his chair back so hard it nearly tipped over. And I want to be precise about this because even now it sounds like something out of a movie, and I keep having to remind myself it actually happened. My 35-year-old brother dropped to his knees on the dining room floor and started sobbing. I've done everything right, he wailed, fists pressed against his eyes. I'm supposed to be the successful one. You owe me at least $15 million. I want to sit with that sentence for a second because I did, at the table, for what felt like a very long time. You owe me. Not, I am happy for you, but I am struggling. Not even, can we talk about helping the family? You owe me $15 million, as though my company, my 10 years, my 51 rejections, were simply his. A resource he had been waiting to access. My mother slammed both hands on the table. You stole his future, she screamed. I sat there frozen, fork still in my hand, while 30 years of every birthday card, every hospital lecture, every Lucas is still finding his footing, came rushing back all at once, and I finally understood, with a clarity that felt almost peaceful, what I actually was to this family. I was the backup plan. I always had been, and the backup plan had just been activated. I stood up. I grabbed my coat from the hall closet, and I came back to the doorway of the dining room, where my entire family was still sitting frozen around a table of cooling food. I built a company while you were paying his rent, I said. I earned this, and for the first time in my life, I'm going to be selfish. Then I walked out. Nobody followed me to the car. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed at 2:47 in the morning. Suspicious login attempt blocked. We noticed an unusual sign-in to your account. I sat up in bed, my heart already pounding before I had even fully processed why. I opened the banking app for Charter Pacific Bank, where I had moved my proceeds after the acquisition on the advice of my old startup's chief financial officer, into a structure that included a high-yield account I rarely touched. There were 4 blocked transfer attempts. Each one was for $15 million, the exact number Lucas had screamed across the dinner table. Each one was to the same external account, a checking account belonging to Lucas Reyes. The bank's fraud alert had flagged the login location. I stared at the IP address for a long moment before I recognized it, because I had helped set up the Wi-Fi router myself 4 years earlier, the last time I had visited. My parents' house. I did not sleep again that night. I sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop, going through the login attempt logs, my hands, for the first time since the dinner table, actually shaking. Not from fear, exactly. From the specific, sick feeling of watching a number, my number, the number representing 10 years of my life, get typed into a wire transfer form by someone in my childhood home at 3 in the morning, 4 times in a row, like someone trying a stuck key in a lock. I told myself, even then, maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone got phished. Maybe Lucas's email got hacked, and someone was impersonating him. I do not know why I kept doing that, giving them outs they had not earned. I think some part of me just did not want it to be true yet. I drove to my parents' house first thing that morning. I did not call ahead. Sitting in the driveway, gleaming, obnoxiously red, with an actual bow on the hood like something out of a luxury car commercial, was a brand new Porsche 911. Lucas came out the front door before I had even turned off my car, grinning, tossing a set of keys in one hand like he had been waiting for an audience. Family takes care of family, he said. Figured I deserved a pick-me-up, for everything. I stood there in the driveway, looking at a car that cost more than most people's annual salary, 2 days after someone had tried to wire $15 million out of my account from this exact house. How did you pay for this? I asked. My voice came out flatter than I expected. My mother appeared in the doorway behind Lucas, arms crossed, wearing the expression she usually reserved for when I had done something wrong. We were just expediting what's fair, she said. Consider it an advance. An advance. On money that, as far as anyone in that family knew, I had not offered to anyone. I did not say anything else. I got back in my car and drove straight to the Porsche dealership listed on the temporary plate frame. Lakeshore Porsche, about 20 minutes away. I asked to speak to the finance manager. His name was Daniel Okafor. He pulled up the loan file on his screen, and I watched his face shift as he read it. It was the careful, professional shift of someone realizing he was about to deliver bad news to someone who did not see it coming. Mr. Reyes, he said slowly, you're listed as the guarantor on this loan. We have a signed authorization. It came through DocuSign from an email address ending in Reyes Family. Net. I knew that email address. It was an old shared family account set up years ago for family stuff. Vacation planning, holiday logistics, that kind of thing. I had not used it in years. I had not authorized anyone to use my name on it for anything, let alone a $187,000 car loan. That signature isn't mine, I said. Daniel's expression went very still. Mr. Reyes, I'm going to need you to put that in writing. Today, if possible. We may need to flag this loan for our fraud department. I sat in the parking lot of that dealership for almost 20 minutes afterward, just breathing. My mother had forged my signature on a DocuSign to buy my brother a Porsche, 2 days after he had cried on the floor demanding $15 million he had never earned. Enjoy the car, Lucas, I said out loud to no one, sitting alone in my car. It's the last thing you'll ever get from me. I called a friend from business school that afternoon, someone who had gone into corporate law and had, over the years, developed a reputation I can only describe as the lawyer you call when things have stopped being polite. Her name was Olivia Marsh, and she had spent 14 years doing post-acquisition litigation and asset protection for exactly the kind of situation I was apparently now in. I told her everything. The dinner, the $15 million wire attempts, the IP address, the Porsche, the forged DocuSign. There was a long pause on the line when I finished. Ethan, she finally said, I want to be very clear with you. What you're describing, attempted unauthorized wire transfers, forged signatures on a loan document, these aren't family disagreements. These are crimes. I know that's hard to hear about your own mother, but I need you to hear it because it's going to matter for what we do next. Olivia moved fast. Within 48 hours, she had my assets. The full $25 million, plus the proceeds I had already invested, restructured into a series of blind trusts with new account numbers, new institutions, and access protocols that, as Olivia put it, would require a notarized court order and about 6 weeks just to look at, let alone move. She also brought in a forensic accountant, a man named Walter Cho, CPA, who specialized in exactly this kind of family financial dispute. Walter's job was to trace the digital fingerprints, the login attempts, the DocuSign metadata, and the loan application back to their sources. It did not take him long. The 4 wire transfer attempts had originated from a single device on my parents' home Wi-Fi network at 2:41, 2:43, 2:45, and 2:47 in the morning. 4 attempts, 4 minutes apart, each one blocked by the bank's fraud system, each one growing slightly more aggressive in its formatting, like someone trying increasingly desperate variations of the same password. The forged DocuSign was traced to an iPad registered under my mother's Apple ID. The document had been signed, meaning someone had drawn a signature with their finger that was supposed to resemble mine. At 11:14 at night, the night before the Porsche showed up in the driveway. Walter's report even included a side-by-side comparison, my actual signature from my passport renewal 3 years earlier against the forged one. They were not even close. Whoever forged it clearly had not expected anyone to look that carefully. Because why would they? Nobody had ever looked at me that carefully before. Olivia also brought in a licensed private investigator, a woman named Renee Castillo, mostly as a precaution. In family disputes involving this much money, Olivia said, it's common for one party to try to get information through informal channels. I want to know if that's happening to you. It was, about a week into all of this, my cousin Greg, my mother's nephew, someone I had always considered, if not close, at least neutral, texted me out of nowhere asking if I wanted to grab coffee. Just to catch up, he said. Feels like forever. I almost said no. Something about the timing felt off. Greg and I had not gotten coffee, just the two of us, in probably 5 years. But Renee, when I mentioned it to her, said something that stuck with me. Go. Just go normally. People who are trying to extract information usually do a worse job of hiding it than they think. She was right. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. Greg seemed nervous in a way I could not quite place at first, fidgeting with his phone, angling it on the table in a way that seemed deliberate. About 10 minutes in, he asked, in what he clearly thought was a casual tone. So, hypothetically, if someone wanted to, set up a trust for a family member, how does that even work? Is that something a regular person could do? Or do you need a ton of lawyers? It was such a strange, specific question, phrased exactly like someone reading from notes, that I just knew. I do not know how else to describe it. I had spent 10 years learning to read rooms, to notice when something did not add up, and this did not add up. Greg, I said, is your phone recording right now? He froze. Just for a second, barely more than a blink. But it was enough. What? No, that's... He reached for his phone too quickly, and in doing so, knocked it slightly. I saw, for just a moment, a red recording indicator on the screen before he fumbled it face down on the table. My mother asked you to do this, I said. It was not really a question. Greg's face did something complicated. Guilt, mostly, but also a kind of resigned exhaustion, like he had known this would go badly from the start. She said she'd talk to my mortgage broker, he said quietly. I'm behind on payments, Ethan. She said, if I could just find out what you were planning with the trusts, she could help. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I picked up his phone, face down and still recording, and dropped it into his latte. I did not say anything else. I just stood up, put cash on the table for my coffee, and walked out. I want to be honest. It was not my most mature moment, but I also do not regret it. Some things, you just need one small, petty, deeply satisfying gesture to get through. Olivia had been negotiating, through my parents' attorney, toward a mediation session. A chance, she said, to resolve this without it becoming a criminal matter if your family is willing to be reasonable. I was not optimistic, but Olivia thought it was worth trying, mostly because a clean, documented resolution would protect me from years of future advance requests. The night before mediation, I barely slept. I kept running through everything. The wire attempts, the forged loan, Greg's phone, and his latte. The fact that in 3 days, my entire family had gone from, we do not really see you, to, we tried to take $15 million from you twice. Around 1 in the morning, Walter Cho called me. He apologized for the late hour, but said he had found something he thought I needed to see before mediation. Something that had come up while he was tracing the Porsche loan's paper trail. Ethan, he said, I need you to understand. This isn't about you anymore. Not entirely. He sent over a document. A second mortgage application, filed 3 months earlier on my parents' house. Signed, forged. Walter's analysis showed, using the same iPad, by my father, Robert Reyes. Your mother took out a second mortgage on your parents' home, Walter said. 3 months before Christmas, the funds were deposited into an account in Lucas's name. Based on the deposit history, your brother has been receiving roughly $4,200 a month from that account since. Which, Ethan, lines up almost exactly with what a mid-level salary would look like after taxes. I sat with that for a moment. You're saying... I'm saying I think your brother hasn't had a job in a while, Walter said. And I think your mother has been managing that quietly for months. I had less than 12 hours before mediation, and I now had a piece of information that I was fairly sure my own father did not have. I did not sleep at all that night. The mediation took place in a conference room at Olivia's firm, neutral ground, as these things go. My parents walked in dressed like they were attending a gala. My mother wore a cream suit I had never seen before. My father wore a tie he usually reserved for funerals. Lucas strutted in last, wearing a silver watch that, I would learn later, had been purchased the same week as the Porsche, on the same forged authorization. Their attorney, a tired-looking man named Philip Garrity, opened with what I can only describe as a tone-deaf offer. I would pay $5 million to restore family harmony. And in exchange, everyone would simply move on. Olivia did not blink. She opened her briefcase. Exhibit A, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Login records from Charter Pacific Bank, showing 4 attempted wire transfers of $15 million each, originating from the home network registered to Robert and Evelyn Reyes at 2:41, 2:43, 2:45, and 2:47 a.m., 2 nights after the incident at Christmas dinner. The destination account in all 4 attempts belonged to Lucas Reyes. Philip opened his mouth. Olivia kept going. Exhibit B, she said, sliding over a second folder. A retail installment loan for a 2024 Porsche, 911 inches, the amount of $187,000, guaranteed by my client Ethan Reyes, via a DocuSign signature. Our forensic examiner has confirmed does not match Mr. Reyes's verified signature on file with the U.S. State Department. The device used to execute that signature was an iPad registered to Evelyn Reyes. My mother started to say something. That's not, we were just... But Olivia was not finished. Lucas slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. You're acting like we're criminals. I'm your brother, Ethan. You're being cheap. You're being greedy. After everything. You don't have a reputation to uphold, Lucas, I said quietly. It was the first thing I had said since sitting down, and it landed harder than I expected. Lucas actually flinched, like I had raised my voice, even though I had not. Olivia opened the third folder. This one, I knew, was the one Walter had called me about at 1 in the morning. According to records subpoenaed from Lucas's former employer, Marsdale Logistics Group, she said, Lucas was terminated for cause 8 months ago. He has not drawn a paycheck since May. There is no promotion. There is no job. The room went very still. My father, who until that moment had said nothing, had just sat with his hands folded on the table like a man at a funeral. Now he looked up sharply. What is she talking about? He said, his voice cracking slightly. Lucas, you leave for the office every morning. You talk about your team. It's a lie, Lucas said, but his voice had gone thin and reedy, nothing like the confident strut he had walked in with. Olivia slid one more document across the table, not toward me and not toward Lucas, but toward my father. 3 months ago, she said, Evelyn Reyes took out a second mortgage on the family home, the home you and Mrs. Reyes own jointly, Mr. Reyes, in the amount of $94,000. The application bears your signature. Our forensic accountant has confirmed this signature was also produced via the same iPad, using the same software as the Porsche loan authorization. The proceeds of that mortgage were deposited in monthly installments of roughly $4,200 into Lucas's checking account, beginning the month after his termination. My father picked up the document. I watched his hands, actually shaking the way mine had been 2 nights after Christmas, as he stared at his own forged signature. Evelyn, he said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. You mortgaged our home for this? My mother burst into tears. I want to be precise about what kind of tears, because it matters. They were not tears of guilt. They were tears of fury. The specific, wounded fury of someone who genuinely believed right up until that moment that she had done nothing wrong. She turned to me, pointing, mascara already running. Ethan was supposed to fix this, she said, her voice rising to something close to a shriek. He has $25 million doing nothing. He was supposed to be the solution. That's what he's for. I sat there and let that sentence exist in the room for a moment. That is what he is for. 32 years, distilled into 5 words, finally said out loud in front of a lawyer, a forensic accountant's reports, and my father, whose home had just been mortgaged without his knowledge to fund a fiction his wife had been maintaining for 8 months. Olivia closed her briefcase. The sound, a single sharp click, seemed to land harder than anything anyone had said. Here are our terms, she said, and her voice did not change at all, which somehow made it more final than if she had shouted. Ethan pays nothing. Not now, not ever. No settlement, no advance, no future request of any kind. The Porsche is returned to the dealership today. Ethan will not be assuming any portion of that loan, and the dealership has already been notified of the fraud. All 3 of you will sign a binding no-contact agreement. No attempts to access Ethan's accounts, finances, or assets in any form, and no further communication about this matter to extended family. If any term of this agreement is violated, even once, we go directly to the district attorney's office with everything in these folders, plus everything Mr. Cho has compiled on the mortgage fraud. You have 5 minutes to sign. My father signed first. His hand was shaking so badly his signature barely looked like a signature at all, which, given everything, felt almost too on the nose. My mother snatched the pen from him. She glared at me. Really glared. The kind of look I had spent 32 years learning to brace for. Then she hissed, "You're a monster." "I didn't destroy this family," I said. "You did. The moment you decided I was just your backup plan." She signed. Then she threw the pen across the table. It bounced off Lucas's chest and clattered to the floor. Lucas picked it up. He did not look at me. He did not look at anyone. He stared at the table for a long moment. And in that moment, I think, for the first time in his entire life, Lucas Reyes understood that the floor he had been standing on for 35 years had just been signed away. He signed. I was not there when it happened, but Olivia sent me a photo the next morning, taken, I am fairly sure, by a neighbor, because the angle was from across the street, slightly shaky, the kind of photo someone takes through a window blind. A tow truck was in my parents' driveway, hooking up the front axle of a red Porsche 911. The bow was gone. Two people stood at the edge of the lawn, I assume my parents, not moving, just watching, while across the street, in at least two different houses, the blinds were very visibly, very slightly, parted. I do not know what has happened to my family since then. The no-contact agreement cuts both ways, and honestly, after everything, I have not tried to find out. I heard through Aunt Clara, the same aunt whose innocent question started all of this, who reached out a few weeks later with what I think was a genuinely apologetic message, that Lucas moved back in with my parents temporarily. I heard that my father started seeing a financial advisor alone to sort out the house situation, and I heard that my mother, as far as anyone knows, still believes she did not do anything wrong.